Hello guys, welcome back to my gaming PC series. Today we will be taking a look at the best and fastest $300 gaming PC that I think we can currently build. And we break this video down into two parts. As always, we're first gonna go over all the parts and why we picked them. And then we will test multiple games to see how well this gaming PC actually does. But now let's not waste any more time and let's dive directly into the parts for our $300 gaming PC build. Heart of the PC in this price category is the AMD Ryzen 3 3200G. It has 4 CPU cores with a base clock of 3.6 GHz and it has the responsiveness and performance you would usually expect from a much pricier processor. 6 years ago, when the first Intel processor with 4 cores and 4 GHz was introduced, you had to pay $300 for that CPU. But now you get this for about a third of the price, which is just great. So basically the Ryzen 3 3200G is one of the few processors that helped us a lot to finally take the leap towards really affordable gaming PCs that are actually worth building. Because those PCs can finally play some decent video games in good quality and higher FPS. Now the best thing about this processor is that it includes a fully functioning GPU that can render your video game graphics. The integrated Radeon Vega 8 is one of the fastest integrated GPUs that AMD has ever built. Now in Cinebench, where professionals usually test CPU performances, we score a very solid result for such a low budget processor with 1481 points. And when it comes to the single core benchmark, the results are also very good because we score 391 points, which is in the range of some Intel i7s, which cost way more than our processor here. It is also noteworthy that during all the benchmarks the temperatures were very stable even though I only used the stock cooler. This is very good for us because since the cooler is very solid and is also included in the price, we don't need to buy an extra one, which makes this build even cheaper. Of course, we also need a solid motherboard that perfectly supports our Ryzen 3, and therefore I recommend the Gigabyte GA A320M S2H. It supports all the necessary frequencies, the AM4 socket and the 3rd generation compatibility. It also has all the connectors that we need and it is one of the cheapest motherboards out there. When it comes to the memory, we want to equip it with two 4GB RAM blocks from Corsair with 3200 MHz. This is a really fast RAM and the built-in XMP2 support ensures trouble-free and automatic overclocking. By using two RAM blocks, we are also making use of their dual mode capability, giving us a little bit more extra speed. For the disk space, we again rely on the classic PNY CS900 SSD with 240 GB. It's really important to buy SSDs nowadays instead of HDDs because SSDs are almost as cheap as the old HDDs, but much faster. Also, in case 240 GB are not enough at some point in time, we can easily buy additional drives in the future. For the complete system to always be reliably and quietly supplied with power, we use the FGBR with 400 watts. It provides great efficiency with its 80+ bronze certification. It has all of the necessary protection circuits, enough power to support all the other hardware parts, and it comes from a very renowned manufacturer, which is usually quite important when it comes to power supplies in general. Now to switch it up a little bit, I installed all the hardware parts in an Entech VSK10 gaming case. It is definitely one of the cases with the best price to performance. Especially if you're not so much into RGB and rather prefer an elegant and simple design, this tower is a great option for you as it provides everything that we need. Enough space for all the parts, even additional HDDs or a dedicated graphics card that you might buy in the future, enough airflow and noise protection. So now, since we're finished with all the components, let's jump into the benchmarks and game tests. Of course, I have tested this gaming PC in the 3D Mark x SPY benchmark and then in multiple gaming titles. In 3D Mark x SPY, this build scores 848 overall points. The graphics score is 747 and the CPU score is 3193. That's actually pretty solid, especially the CPU scores are quite good. We can also see that when it comes to game performance, the GPU will be the bottleneck here, because the 4 cores with those 4 GHz are really strong. And that also corresponds with what I saw in the gameplay tests. But now let's take this build through a few titles and see how it does. By the way, if you want to see more gaming PC builds from other price categories and corresponding gaming benchmarks, be sure to hit that subscribe button, as that will come out in the next few months. Now, I didn't feel it was completely appropriate to test this particular gaming PC at ultra settings for all games, as it did struggle a little bit here and there. So we do have a little bit of a mix in this testing. Starting off with League of Legends, however, and here I was able to play at 1080p and max settings without any problems. Even playing at 4K was completely possible, even though I would advise playing this game with a higher frame rate rather than a higher resolution. Here at 1080p, our build is averaging 110 FPS at medium settings, with max settings at 84 frames respectively. At 4K we get 48 FPS at medium settings and 42 FPS at max settings. I know League of Legends isn't a particularly hard game to run, but it is a very popular one, and here this build is providing enough power to enjoy this game quite a lot. Moving on to CSGO, here we are looking at 1080p and 720p in a normal multiplayer match. Here at 1080p we get an average of 48 frames per second at high settings and 84 FPS on low settings. However, at 720p this build is able to push above 70 FPS at medium settings, and we see that extend beyond 100 FPS on low settings. Another game our PC handled high settings at was Valorant. As this is another esports title, I was not surprised to see another solid average of 64 frames per second at 1080p and high settings, hitting 110 FPS at low settings. I tested this particular game also in WQHD and got 48 FPS at medium settings and 82 FPS at low settings. Not much else to say, but this game PC was easily capable at 1080p at this title. Fortnite did also prove to be playable at low as well as medium settings. At 1080p our build is averaging 46 FPS at medium settings and 87 FPS at low settings, while it's averaging 51 and 107 FPS at 720p. And so while ultra settings were not playable in my tests, medium and low settings were no problem. However, if you want to play Fortnite with this build, I would recommend upgrading to 16GB of RAM, because in my tests RAM was always fully loaded, and upgrading it would definitely increase the FPS for a small amount of money. After testing all those esports titles, I also tested some AAA titles, and I have to say that here our $300 gaming PC struggled a little bit, especially with heavy titles like Flight Simulator, Doom or Red Dead Redemption 2. In fact, Red Dead Redemption 2 didn't even start up because it said I didn't have enough VRAM. And so if you are one of those guys who prefer playing AAA titles over esports titles, then I would recommend buying a dedicated GPU, because that is what you need in order to be able to enjoy those games fully. Overall, I think that this build is the best gaming PC you can currently build with a budget of about $300. For me personally, it's also very exciting to see how strong of a PC you can build with a very small budget right now. I mean, it's only $300 and it's still capable of playing most esports titles at 1080p and some even at 4K. I would be very happy to build this budget PC myself, but of course I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. In general, I think there has never been a better time for low budget gaming PCs, because the Intel vs AMD rivalry really brought some great products onto the market these last years. Anyways, as always guys, a huge thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and I see you in the next one.